It's it can be tricky at times. I think if you sort of know what a director is after, you sort of see, you go through the rushes, you look at the way he's composed things, you look at how, shots sometimes develop, how dialogue works, how the action works within the shot. And you say, okay, yeah, right, he wants that, then I think he wants that, and then he wants that. I mean, within that, of course, there's always an interesting way to sort of, the opportunity to maybe discover something that he hasn't, being so close to maybe looking for the perfect performance or the perfect read or the perfect sort of framing in other takes. And I think that's what, going back to what we were saying about watching everything. I mean, there are certainly circle takes, but I think there's so much you can discover. And then when a director does come on board and watch what you've done, a lot of the time it works well. But there are bits where he might sort of go, he'll initially say, "Oh no, I didn't want that. I wanted it like that." And then go, "Hang on, play that again. Show me that again." And you watch it again. You go, it's
very familiar.
It's not bad. And I mean, I think that's part of what you can add. It's just that extra element of seeing, even at the moment, what he just for various reasons hasn't seen. That it's just part of a kind of a dialogue that you can establish with him. And sometimes he's very pleasantly surprised, sometimes he's very pleasantly annoyed, but I mean that's just part of it. The thing is, it's very hard, I think, to do it do it wrong. He would, if you're lucky, he sits and goes, "Well, that's great. Let's now just start from the beginning again." But I think having those periods with the director are important, and most directors I work with tend to they have such long days now on the shoot that they rarely have that time to come in the evenings. They'll barely get through watching a few rushes, a few takes, and then that'll be it. But there's time, on their days off, or potentially your days off, that you'll spend a few hours with them, and it's actually very, very good. And you were saying about psychologically, how does that work? Well, I mean, you could be many things to a director. You could be a psychologist as much as an editor, because he's there on set with 100 people, and he's getting it right, and then it's just you and him or you and her, and they're sort of going, do we have this? Did we get it? Can we make it work? And it's a very interesting process. And as you pointed out, when you suddenly put shot A to shot B together, and there's a moment, for me, editing is like a series of little epiphanies. Sometimes you just get that moment, and it gives you a lot of pleasure, even though a cut, it's instantaneous. It doesn't have any length to it, but just that moment is a wonderful moment to sort of the doing of it moment. And I think directors really enjoy that, discovering that process sometimes.
There is a right time to say something, which is when they're about to strike the set.
Oh yes.
And I have, or when they're about to move to a different continent to film. And I've been in this situation where I've watched the dailies and they've got one day left in the country, and they've spent 6 hours filming something which they're incredibly proud of and think is great. And I've watched it and I've gone, don't understand what is going on, sorry guys. And I have to just quietly put my hand up and say, look, firstly to the director usually, but then then the line producer, and then the producer, and sometimes the star of the film, the DP, they're all like, what are you talking about? And my job is actually to one of the first things that we do is watch through the dailies and ring alarm bells if there's a problem. It's crucially important, because there are sets there are actors there, and nobody wants to hear what you're about to say. It's not the right time, but you have to just put your hand up and go, guys, I think we have a problem, and I don't understand this because of this, and this, and I know you all think it's great, but I'm really in the dark, and I think we need to have another crack at it. And then there's decisions to be made about overtime for crew and stuff, but it's much better to do it then than 6 months later and not say. So that's one thing I would say is take that very seriously when you're doing our job. It's a big responsibility, but it is crucially important that you do speak up at that point.
That's what you're there for. I mean, I would say I keep in touch with my director every day. I'd usually, either text or speak to them in the evening, not during shoot, but just to say how I think the rushes are. And they like that because they want to know if they're missing, or if there's a certain thing they might need to pick up again.
Or
Not
if
even
you like something, if you've got stuff you enjoy, they'll have a compliment.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
A first day of an actor as well sometimes can be an interesting thing to feedback. I can remember a really good conversation with a director after looking at the dailies for a lead actor and having a conversation that was, I was trying to make the point, but somehow I managed to make him make it for me, if you like, which was that it's a bit like if you throw somebody a load of balls, they won't catch anything. If you throw them one, they'll catch it. And she was so busy in what she was doing, and it was very full of tics and mannerisms. And we were trying to say we need something much, much more still. And that conversation meant at 6 a.m. they reshot a scene, that, the most important of those scenes. So it's kind of, it seems to arrive with certain big moments in the filmmaking schedule.
Well, it is true that it's part of our job to speak up, and if you've said what you have to say and they ignore it, I've had a situation where they did have to go back and reconstruct a set and do that, but it wasn't that I didn't say something before, and then you earn more credibility later. Maybe they'll listen to you next time. But we are not only the first viewers of the dailies, but also the first viewers of the film, the first audience, so to speak. Because as we construct the sequences, we're seeing it for the first time. And if what we see for the first time is, works for us, then we try it on somebody else. And that's how these scenes evolve. And do you show your scenes to your assistants? Do you get people to look at them as you do them?
I involve my assistant a lot. I trust her, and I show her stuff and ask her opinion. Not immediately, but during the week I would probably show her new scenes, and I like to hear what she has to say. Because I'm trying to train her anyway to be an editor.
It's good to get
it's a way
feedback
to do it,
and to allow them into that process.
Exactly.